Okay, Kyle, we're going to go to the side view here. I did some bullet point items again, things that we look at. Again, 90% of people heel strike and overstride. It's kind of like professional or golfers, professionals. There's probably about 10% are single-digit handicappers, and the majority of people are just 90 to 100 strokes simply because they don't work on the form. They just go out and play, and that's kind of like runners just going out and running. That's why most people heel strike and overstride. Fortunately, that's not you, so you're in that top 10%. As you know, you've obviously had some great running experience, and that usually shows in our collegiate runners, but not always. Plenty of collegiate runners still overstride and heel strike, just putting on ugly miles and ingraining that poor form into their performance. Now, they'll get better cardiovascular parameters with their training. We always talk about that, Steve and I, how they're kind of butterfly swimming is the analogy for swimming. They can get better at doing that stroke by doing more of it, but it simply doesn't pay off because they're not going to beat a freestyler. That's the most efficient swimming form. So we're trying to get people out of that heel strike overstride, getting to the best, most efficient form to make that training that they do, those miles that they put on, all go in the bucket. So we don't have a hole at the bottom of the bucket, and we're not pouring stuff in that's leaking out to the sides. We're capturing every bit of that form that we can. So nice thing is, with you, remember the top items are the ones that are the biggest rocks in the way, and both in your side and front view or your back and front view, we cross them out too, and we can kind of cross those first top items off for you. So let's watch you run by here, and then we'll kind of break it down, the bullet point items again, and see where we're at here. So there you go, cruising by. Nice cadence again. That's a nice aspect to your running, is you have a high cadence at 180, higher than the average, and pretty much close to the ideal. Now I'm going to catch you coming back the other way because you, again, we're not on a treadmill, so you go by the screen pretty quickly for these analysis. So we're going to try to slow it down so I can grab you, and we can look at some of these bullet point items here. There's your shadow. Here we go. So you're going to step in here, and a real nice thing I like about your form is you're almost picture perfect on that midfoot strike. You're not heel striding. You're not heel striking. You land very close to your center of mass here. We want to get almost underneath us. Very difficult for most people to land exactly underneath them, but you're pretty darn close. And again, look at the elbow angle that you're maintaining there. I really like this elbow angle too. So we can kind of cross that item out. All right, so we have a couple things left. Vertical motion, heel at lift and knee drive, which is I think the biggest capture you want to do, is try to get that hip, hamstring, and dorsiflexion calf together to get a little more knee drive. What I'm going to talk about, Kyle, is unicycle running. Everybody kind of talks about chi running and things like that. I call it unicycle running. We want to see how a person runs like a unicycle. And why is that? A unicycle doesn't have any lateral motion, and it doesn't have any vertical motion. So with vertical motion, we're trying to capture what the up and down is. So I'm going to try to capture your low and your high point here and just see how vertical you're going. I don't think you're going that bad with it. So let's try to catch a frame by frame here. And back you up a little bit again, sorry. You're kind of a moving target on a treadmill. This is a little easier, but we can do it. We get a lot of film like this. We just got to be patient and try to find the spots here. So if we look at your lowest point back here, probably where that line is, and then where do you go relative to that, you're doing pretty good. We don't want to see that vertical rise more than about what you're showing there. Top of the head to maybe mid-forehead at best. When you get to the eyes or the nose, and we see those big vertical guys, you know, where they're getting all the way here, that's pretty bad. So in your case, you're kind of converting pretty nicely to that horizontal drive without going too vertical. Now, part of that is because, again, the picking up of the heels for you is not very, very high. If you look right here, you see where you're driving on the horizontal here, where you're leaving a little bit at the table is the horizontal knee drive and the knee fold. So we want to get you going a little bit more driven from that hip, and we want the heel lift a little bit higher, at least to the crease of the back of the knee would be a minimum, because that's kind of horizontal. You see you're a little bit lower than that. Probably could go with just a slightly more forward lean. You do jackknife at impact, but you're not using that forward lean. You kind of come up out of it to a vertical position here. Let me back you up a little bit so we can see that. Yeah, so right here, before you go into the impact, you're staying pretty upright. So maybe the head's a little forward, but we want just a little bit more forward lean. What I usually tell people, Kyle, is it's kind of like the sweet spot in baseball when somebody hits a home run and they know when it comes off the bat that it's going to be a home run. It's just a feel to it. So I would suggest playing around with your forward lean, almost like the trim on a boat, where there's that ideal efficiency of the engine, depending on the trim of the motor and the prop. In your case, you want to lean a little more forward, almost maybe over-leaning, and then throttle it back and just feel where you feel like you're running downhill and you're just falling down the hill and your feet are trying to keep up with you. Remember, for you, we can cross these two things out as well. So we're really down to this little bit of forward lean, and probably one of the, I call it the end game for people, is the heel lift and the knee drive. It's probably the hardest thing for people to do, especially high mileage people, because we tend to just pick up the feet and put them down. We may be mid-foot striking. Again, for you, you're coming in a nice mid-foot strike there. You see how nicely that is. Nice thing is, too, at your impact, you're very perpendicular to ground with your tibia. That's also a very good component to your running. So again, we're getting nitty-picky for you because you're in the elite category, better than the average runner, where we have to just kind of look at those little small rocks in the way, not the big rocks, the big rock being the heel strike and the overstride. So let me give you a couple videos of other runners, and then we're going to try to discuss maybe how to incorporate a couple drills into your longer runs that would address the forward lean, the heel lift, and the knee drive. And then I think, like most runners, Kyle, your biggest gains are just some strengthening specific to the lateral hips and obviously the core. One of the discussions I have with coaches, high school coaches, is most kids 17 under, they have no core. They're all arms and legs. When we get to 17 to 28, that was the best shape of my life, running Division I, having a blast. We're in great shape. We have more core. And if you think about it, even professional athletes start retiring at about 30. And after 30, we start to lose our core again. And so it's kind of those bookends, and those are the runners that we really want to really get going, is get back to the core and get to the lateral hips, because we're working for a living then. We're sitting more. We're just not engaged like we are going out and playing ultimate frisbee like my kids do, doing all the things that we do in the yard to complement our running. We tend to be very linear driven when we're, especially your triathletes that are running, biking, and swimming. It's all linear. That's, to me, is not cross training. That's still all in the sagittal plane, that forward-backward plane. So that's our take-home message for a lot of runners, is their cross training should try to get those target muscles that enhance our running. Don't add to the quads, don't add to the calves. You're already doing a ton of that when you're running. Remember, Kenyans don't have big calves or quads. That's not what they're using to run. They're using the core like you. They're getting more of this involved in their running. That's a lot more muscles contributing. I call it the friends and helpers plan. Get all your body running instead of just the calves and the quads, which are anaerobic. They're going to wear out on you. That's why they're not big in those Kenyans. So let's look at some example videos that we have. This is more your common everyday runner that we see. This is your very common upright vertical runner, just out for a nice little run. Nothing bad about him. He likes this form. He's practiced it very well, but you can see he's going to enter in a heel strike. He's going to end up impacting and what we call serving as a break, a stop, and a pull, as all his forces are generated up through his heel to his knee to his back, etc. In addition to that, you can't jump on your heel, so he's actually stopping, braking, and then pulling himself along. So pulling is less efficient than pushing. With your nice mid-foot strike and your perpendicular landing of your lower leg, you're in a nice push position, and your push is going to be enhanced by your forward lean. See, he's fairly upright here. Sorry, the arrows are off there, but we're going to get him doing a little more forward lean, which is going to get him kind of running downhill. Now, he also has this arm that kind of chops up and down, and this is, again, the old school way that I was taught to run years ago, is just let your hand brush your hip. That was more kind of for your, but it keeps you too square to the target, and you see how low that hand, how big that angle is. This elbow angle should be constant during his distance running. The only time you start hinging at the elbow is your kick to the finish, and if you change gears in the mid-race for about 2 minutes at a time, and then you settle back in with the rotation that you were showing, and then when you want to drive the arms, you got them for about 2 minutes because they're anaerobic, and you're driving to the finish. Think of a speed skater that's resting an arm, and then he goes back into play again, and then when he finally hammers it to the finish, he's got both arms a-swinging. That's kind of what we have to think about with the elbow angle. So that's the big picture for him. Very vertical, low arm position, heel strike over stride. If we look at, and this is one of our high school runners that we converted on our team, and this is where he went with his running. So you can see the difference. In the left, he's doing what most people run. They kind of mimic their walking at a faster pace. And on the right, he's actually running, which should be distinctively different looking than walking. And you can see how much more, if we sync these up for you, look at how much more heel lift and knee drive he has. So in this picture, he's at least getting, the crease of the back of the knee he's driving through, which gives him a little bit of horizontal drive. But we'll show you in a couple videos in a minute, this higher lift that he has over here, enhanced by his knee drive, really starts to get the unicycle going, as I call it. That's a kind of a neat picture to see. Now, this is a female runner. This is a common occurrence too. This is a female triathlete. Now, she's ripped. I mean, this girl's been working out, and it hasn't really paid off in her running. And you don't know how someone runs until you watch them. And I tell people this all the time. I can look at somebody, they can wear the fanciest clothes in the world. It doesn't tell you the best shoes. It doesn't tell you how their form is until you see them run. And this is how she ran. So she's doing a nice midfoot strike. She's not overstriding, but she's very vertical, and she's just not using her core at all. Her arm positioning is low, and her cadence is 200. So here we have a situation where the cadence is so high that it's like being in spin class. There's no torque output. We typically see very low cadences, 150, 165 maybe. In her case, it was just chip, chop, 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 and it was really taken away from her. I mean, she's ripped. If she knew how to use these muscles in form, it's going to equate and convert very quickly because she's already in great shape. In her case, we got her to knock off a half a minute per mile in her half marathon, so it was really nice to get her to kind of do that. Now, if we go back to that collegiate runner that I showed you from overhead, this is how he was running. He was running like a statue. He couldn't run any higher. He's up tall. He's got those arms chopping low. He's very vertical running. And Kyle, I call him the tale of two cities. He's got everything going nice down here that we try to teach, and everything up here is whoa. So got a great lower half to his body, not the upper. And he's running 120-mile weeks like this. So you can see he's going to come in nice midfoot strike. Look at how much nice knee fold he has and knee drive. So he's holding that knee on. He's still not using his quad as he drives that knee on the horizontal. So we got great things happening here. But if we go to the upstairs, he's got this big, huge elbow angle, chopping down to his hip, just chopping up and down, which took him vertical, and vertical because he's too upright, and it really didn't help him form-wise. And one of the reasons I use him in a lot of my analysis is he was able to, again, at 120 miles per week, he's already in aerobic condition. He's already in shape. So we did his analysis. We sent him off. I went up to Rochester, watched him run next weekend, and he was able to break his PR in the 3,000 meters the next time out and win the race. And that's the simple conversion he did. You see how he threw the forward lean in. So with the little forward lean, he was running downhill, leaning more than he thought he had to. And he really got his core involved. Now, what he's doing is he's doing what you're doing. He's drawing the elbow back and in. And what you see, and this is a very good picture of this, look at how much more of his back is exposed here. He's using his lats, his traps, his pecs. You can see when he comes through here, and you watch, look at how much of his chest wall is showing now. Where in the left picture, he's so squared to the target. Again, he's just carrying this freight. He's not using it. So there's his chest, and he's just squared to the target. Here, look at how much of his chest we can see. He's actually drawing the elbow back in, which turns on his pecs, his lats, and obliques, and he gets those friends and helpers involved. And the neat thing, he just settled in about 5th place, kept his arms nice up and tight, high like a Kenyan, hiding the elbow. And when it was go time, he started to chop the elbow up and down and really drive and use his bicep. And he kicked to the finish and won and broke his PR. He broke the indoor 1,000-meter school record in the same season. So just a really good example of where form, you can do all the training in the world, and if you don't have the form, you're kind of leaving it at the table. So I kind of like to use him. Now this is also another All-American collegiate runner, and I use him to show a couple things. This is actually my son. He was a sub-14:35Ker, and we're getting his arms, trying to get him a little higher. He had a forward lean. He has a very nice midfoot strike, but I want to show you the heel lift. He's driving the heel up, but he's also driving the knee forward at the same time. And this is a hard concept. It's like foul shots after practice. That's a motor program of your shoulder, then your elbow, and then your wrist. And in running, it's the hip drive, then the knee fold, and then the foot up so we don't come in too toey. And what he's doing here is he's stretching his quadriceps over his thigh. He's not using his quad yet. Think of those people in the half marathons and marathons that their quads are spent. Now think of the Kenyans that don't even have big quads. It's because they're not activating them as long. He still has not extended his knee. So this is the unicycle running that I talk about. When we go to unicycle running, we are trying to mimic the unicycle. We're trying to get inside this wheel. And if we stay inside that wheel, meaning we don't overstride and we have a little forward lean and we're not rocking side to side and going too vertical, that's, hey, a bike is more efficient. So we're going on that nice straight line. So he's coming down and trying to stay inside of that wheel. He's landing a little bit out in front, but you can see the back leg kind of stays inside the wheel. We're not trying to give a big push off with the calf at the end. We're trying to stay in here, spin that wheel. Leo Manzano style, I call it. Leo Manzano's 5'0". He's got a huge, tremendous turnover because he stays in that unicycle mode and he really turns and churns with his upper body. So neat to see a guy like that really turn it on. But that's what we're talking about. With this runner, I forgot to show you in your front and back view for foot example. I use him as a good example. He's a very flat-footed kid, and you could throw him in a very stability shoe to try to help him out. But if you intrinsically strengthen your feet, let me show you his feet from the back. He's in a racing shoe here. You see how he's mid-foot striking. He's landing on the outside border of his foot, like that in supination. He pronates, but he doesn't over-pronate because his posterior tib and his intrinsic and extrinsic ankle muscles are incredibly strong. If you saw him standing there, he'd be as flat-footed as it can be. And when he pushes off, he's going to that supination very quickly. And he has a very good line of progression like you. He's on the dot. But the heel lift is tremendously high. And you'll see that in your elite runners. They really come up high. When I started getting in my 50s and racing the young guys, that I could typically beat my 40s, I finally realized I didn't have this heel lift anymore. I didn't have that knee drive as much as I used to. And you can see how he comes straight up the line with the foot positioning. So it's a really kind of neat thing to see. So let's go back and capture your side view again and just kind of give you some thoughts and overviews of some things. Strengthening, Kyle, we can't emphasize the importance of doing things for the lateral hips. It really helps us capture and not go side to side. In your case, we're really just talking about grabbing a little bit of hip strength, obviously a little bit more core as time goes on. We have to be addressing the core as we're in the workforce. You have a nice perpendicular here, landing with a nice midfoot strike, which is great. Arm positioning is good. I would encourage just a little more forward lean. You collapse a little bit at impact of forward lean, but you're not trusting yourself to get kinetic energy on your side here. The knee drive, I would look at our website. We have something on our Run Mechanics describing how to do the knee drive. We're coming out with a video shortly that I've been working specifically with runners on a half kneel program to really encourage this knee drive, to get that heel up and hold it longer as the knee drives on the horizontal. I tell people, imagine there's a line here about mid-thigh that you're just driving the knee along. Because heel lifts will drive your knee, butt kicks we used to do in high school and some people even at the college level, it drives your knee backwards, and that's not where you want to go. And if you do high knees get people to basically teach people to overstride, because when you do a high knee and that knee's forward up there, you're going to come down with your foot plant way out in front of you. So we do a combined, it's your A-B drill if you know those. It's that kind of string it, your heel, take your heel on a string to your butt and draw it up as your knee drives on the horizontal. So those knee drives, A and B drills, would certainly work just to get you a little more horizontally driven from the hip. So that's about it. I mean, you have 90% of your running is spot on, and it's always that 10 to 20% that we need. And it means taking extra time from your running and throwing it towards the strength. It depends on your time commitment. For me, that always became harder as time went on and I was working, but really enjoyed doing this for you. I'd love to communicate with email if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions. So keep on doing what you're doing. It sounds like you're in a great arena, helping a lot of people, and we hope our Run Smart program is doing that for people as well.